Saw a certain Moses Itauma. You got yourself a good one there, Ben.
Destructive power of this exciting teenager who gets another stoppage.
Yeah, he's not bad, is he? He can do a bit. Would I have confidence in him beating Oleksandr Usyk? I wouldn't bet my house that he wouldn't. You've got three great left hookers. Nonito's in there, Canelo Alvarez and Roy Jones. They all deliver the shot in a different way. The technique is different. Therefore, the technique can't be the thing. Really, really disappointing, really hard one to take. Being honest with you, I was round his house the next day, reflecting over the fight, going through the fight.
Yeah, 100%. We get through it. That's what it's about, we get through it.
We have to take part of the responsibility for when it doesn't go right as well, and that's the same with all of our fighters.
Do you think you're unfairly criticised? I couldn't have ever imagined one day you would be training Anthony Joshua, much less potentially training him against Tyson Fury. You went through a long period of time with Tyson and went through a lot with him, and likewise AJ. I can't imagine how that may or may not feel for you. So we are on the way to the Ben Davison Performance Centre in Harlow to go and see Ben Davison and his stable of fighters. Moses Itauma will be there today, Royston Barney-Smith, Alois Jr., Leigh Wood, head of his fight with Anto Cacace. Always good to come down here, busy stable of fighters, busy gym, so yeah, looking forward to it. Hello and welcome back to One-on-One Boxing with me, Rob Tebbutt. Delighted to be joined today by the one and only Ben Davison. We're here at the lovely Ben Davison Performance Centre in Harlow. Ben, always a pleasure. How you doing?
All good, thanks mate, you?
Good, very good. Always good to get out and see you in the gym. Nice to see you work in your kind of natural habitat. Been a busy day for you as it always is.
Not too busy to be honest. It's actually, the McCormacks aren't in, Fabio's not in, AJ's not in, so still been a little bit of a quiet period to be honest compared to what it usually is.
I think I was still kind of in my head imagining you as the Ben Davison who had maybe one or two fighters, and every time I come here I'm like, oh look, oh Shabazz Massoud's, oh and he's there. It's kind of, not every time I come down here it grows, but something like that, I guess part of the evolution of being a coach.
Yeah, for sure. I think just sometimes, do you know what I find as well? There was a period where I took quite a few prospects on and was looking to build the lads from an earlier part of their career after working with some already established fighters, and then along the way some already established fighters were reaching out, and sometimes it's difficult to say no. Of course there's been times where I had to say no, especially now, but yeah, you manage the best you can. I think we try to do that. The problem is those prospects are now turning into champions themselves or getting into championship fights, which means their level of preparation increases. So it's a tough task, but I think we manage pretty well.
Do you like to keep that blend in the gym? I often speak to coaches who like to have, you know, like your whippersnapper prospects and then the guys who are coming into title contention and then people around championship level. It kind of allows the young ones to keep the old ones on their toes and the older ones to kind of brush up on that and give that experience to the next generation.
Yeah, I think so. I think more than anything it's the environment, and I think it's the type of lads they are, the attitude of them. You know, Leigh Wood is still one of the oldest, if not he is the oldest actually in the gym, but has the attitude to motivate and drive the others along. He sets a standard for, you want to be a hard worker, you need to match that. AJ's another one of those, so very lucky to work with guys like that for that reason, because it sets the standard for the other ones and the prospects to come through to look and go. I think sometimes what happens is they get to a certain standard and their foot can come off the gas. I think with those two guys especially, they're a fantastic example for the next generation or the prospects coming through or the ones that are on the verge of breaking through to see what it takes and what their work ethic is. And I always say to the young ones coming through, you don't wait to become champion to work like that. You work like that to become champion, and it's so true.
And Leigh Wood, of course, you mentioned there, he's got himself a fight finally.
Yeah.
I mentioned to him earlier, one on his BoxRec page, and it had him inactive because he hasn't boxed since 2013. Got a great fight ahead of him against Anto Cacace, and a very competitive fight at Super Feather.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's got fight of the year written all over it, probably. Anto's on a great run. Leigh's been a little bit inactive, but coming off the back of a good run, amazing run himself. So Yeah, I think it's going to be an amazing fight. I think it's going to be an amazing atmosphere. Leigh hasn't been at Nottingham for a little while, so I think they'll be buzzing to have him back there, especially with him doing so well in the football at the minute. I expect a good atmosphere, and as always, and looking forward to it.
We've been speaking probably for the last couple of years of Leigh's active career about that move to 130 pounds. I know he was very tight down at 126 down at featherweight. How much more are you kind of expecting from him up at 130 pounds?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we'll have to see. One thing I've said to him is I think sometimes people make the mistake of they move up in weight, but then they think that means that they can then walk around at a bigger weight. Well, the reason you've moved up in weight is because the cut is too big. Therefore, if you go bigger, the cut is the same, and then it's like, oh, I need to move up another weight. It doesn't work like that. So he still carry on living, walking around, training at the same weight that he has been. I just think it will save him a little bit of the cut, which especially at this age should benefit him. But lives very well, even when he's doing a cut. You know, make sure he does everything professionally and to the best of his ability. Lives clean. So yeah, I think he's always benefited from that, and hopefully he gains a bit more benefit from saving himself, taking a little bit more out.
Now, I know you're well enough at this point to know not to ask for game plans and various bits and pieces, but Anto Cacace, what type of threat, I suppose, does he bring to Leigh Wood?
Yeah, I think he's an intelligent fighter. I think he's a good fighter. Like I said, he's coming off the back of some good wins. I think he's decent on the counter, a good counter puncher as well. Obviously, there's some things that I'm not going to go into, but I think he is. I think he's a good fighter. You know, he beat Josh Warrington, former two-time world champion. Beat Joe Caldina, former two-time world champion. So they're two really, really big wins for him. So he's coming into the fight with a lot of momentum, and we give him our utmost respect.
I guess from one end of the spectrum, I mentioned earlier, kind of the guys who have been fighting for world titles and in and around that to the other, saw a certain Moses Itauma in the gym today. I really enjoyed it. It's the first time I've had that up close, get to see him in the gym. You got yourself a good one there, Ben.
Yeah, he's not bad, is he? He can do a bit. Nah, he's a really good lad. Really, really nice lad. All of them are. The whole family are really, really good people. Absolute pleasure to work with. And yeah, he can fight a bit as well. So
there's all the talk about him and kind of you dealing with bigger name fighters or people who come with a lot of hype around them or whatever is not necessarily a new thing. But even with Moses, it's kind of felt a little bit different. You know, before he'd thrown a punch in the professional ring, people were already talking about him beating Mike Tyson's record and whatever else. You know, each fighter goes at a different pace. How is that for you as a trainer to take that? I mean, it gets thrown around a lot, but a real blue chip prospect in Moses and be trusted really with guiding that career.
Yeah, like you say, I've worked with big name fighters with plenty of pressure on them throughout. So that's just, to be honest with you, we just focus on the day-to-day work. You know, this is the starting point, this is the end goal. If we focus on how we get there, along the way there's going to be all of this talk and expectation and pressure and all the rest of it, but without the actual steps along the way to get there, it means nothing. So we just focus on that and let it play out. And first and foremost, I think he's somebody that he's a thinking fighter, which is somebody that I think is a good partnership because he is a thinking fighter, and you know the way we coach, I think that works. I think that he asks questions, a lot of questions, which is really good because it helps him understand and shows that sometimes, for example, he'll be texting us at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. Is this what you mean? Do you want to see more of this? Did you mean less of this? Is this what you meant when you said da 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 da? So I think that it's the right fit because of his approach, the way he is and the way that we work.
Now, I remember speaking to Leigh Wood, who's kind of, I mean, we've spoke about this in the past, where he's kind of, you know, exemplified the gym and the way that he's worked and the methods that he's kind of learned from yourself, Leigh and Barry really kind of, the proof is in the pudding with what he's done. With Moses, was it as, I mean, Leigh spoke about, it took me a little bit of time, and you mentioned it as well, that kind of bedding in process. Was it like that with Moses, or did he pick it up straight away? How is he different or similar to Leigh?
No, I think it's the same for all of them. I just think they've spent their whole lives, whole boxing lives, looking at the sport like this, punches, this shot landed, that shot landed. All of a sudden we're saying, this is more important than that. When you focus on this, and you look at these things, it becomes a lot easier. And I think for anybody at the first time you're looking at it like that, can be a little bit like, that looks confusing. Our argument is actually looking at it like that is 10 times harder to work out in the moment as opposed to actually looking at it like that. You have a lot clearer path or understanding of what's going to happen. And I think that they all have that to begin with, if I'm honest. And then as soon as they start to, actually that works, actually that does make sense. I think Moses, actually, funny enough, mentioning him, he broke it down, one of the best ways I've heard it be articulated, and he said, everybody I've been to see in terms of coaches and that, they told me how to punch, and you've told me when to punch and why. And I think that's important. One of the things we often say is, like, you've got 3 great left hookers, Nonito Donaire, Canelo Alvarez and Roy Jones, for example, just a random 3. They all deliver the shot in a different way. The technique is different. Therefore, the technique can't be the thing. How they set it up, when they do it, why they're doing it at that time, those are the important things. And that's what makes them who they are, not the turn my wrist 1/4 of an inch more to land this shot and land that shot and it's going to make it better. The more important thing is the setup. How did they set that situation up? How did they know to do that at that moment in time? How did they create that opportunity? Those are the things that make them who they are.
Even being around him in the gym today, I mean, I watched him ask you, should I feint this way? Should I have my back foot here? Should I do that? Has that been the most, I don't want to say surprising part of working with him, or has there been something else that's kind of taken on? Obviously, everybody knows about the talent, but that side of him that we got to saw today is not something that everybody gets to see. Has that been probably the most surprising part, do you think?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think that it's hard to say because before you spend time with somebody, you never really know. I didn't know what his attitude towards boxing was. He tells me he wasn't really enjoying it before. I would say the most surprising thing to me is his talent is undeniable. His ability to learn what we're teaching is undeniable. His ability to process, etc., etc. But I think one of the key things for him to be able to achieve the things he's achieving at such a young age is his maturity. And I think without that, you wouldn't be able to put the pressure on him that he'd come in and these things that you're talking about. That would be maybe a little bit concerned, actually. Maybe we need to put the brakes on that. Actually, it's all getting a bit too much. You don't really get that with him because it's like water off a duck's back. Very, very, what's the word? Just takes it all in his stride, which is very impressive for me, for somebody who's... I'll tell you what stands out for me with Moses. This sums it up, actually, this situation. He was going into the Dempsey-McKean fight. He was fighting on the biggest card in boxing at that moment in time. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Biggest card. Yeah. In a big step up from his opponents before. Chief support on the card. And everybody was talking, oh, this is a step up, this is a step up. A day or two before the fight, I can't remember who it was even with, it might have even been with yourself. Somebody asked him a question, and he said, if I can't get rid of Dempsey-McKean in a few rounds, I'm not the man I think I am. And to me, I thought, to have that confidence on that occasion, in a big step up, before the fight, at that age, that to me was surprising. And I think that sums up what I'm trying to explain.
Does he have that kind of, I mean, again, I'm trying to be respectful to other fighters that you've worked with and other fighters out there, but there does seem that little bit of extra something with him, whether it's what you've just mentioned there. Obviously the performances kind of speak for themselves. You've worked with mercurial talents, your Tyson Furies, Josh Taylor, Pat McCormack in the gym. These are elite, world-class, proven commodities, either amateur or pro or both. Where does he sit among those guys, do you think?
I don't think you can get a bigger prospect, can you? I don't think you can get a bigger prospect. So yeah. I think in terms of him and Pat, for how many fights they've had and where they're at, I think that they're obviously two massive standouts. And yeah, if you're talking about blue chip prospects, they stand out anywhere in the world.
Last one on Moses, I don't want to take up all your time just speaking about him. You've got lots of things to talk about. This whole becoming a world champion before Mike Tyson, beating Mike Tyson's record, kind of putting that to one side at the minute and timelines and dates and whatever, it's not always that easy. Would you have any reservations with putting him in with an Oleksandr Usyk, which is a fight that he's talked about, that he wants to test himself against somebody like Usyk? There's Daniel Dubois who's out there. I know that they've sparred numerous rounds together in the past. From your vantage point as somebody who knows Moses intimately, is he ready for those guys? Would you have confidence in him beating an Oleksandr Usyk if they were to fight next weekend?
Would I have confidence in him beating Oleksandr Usyk? I wouldn't bet my house that he wouldn't, put it that way. Would it be a risk? Of course. There isn't anybody in the division that I think he isn't capable of beating. There's some style matchups that I think would prefer a little bit more experience in this area, would prefer a little bit more experience in that area before going into a fight like that. I think there's a couple of fights that I'm not going to mention any names in my mind that I would like for him to have. And if he comes through them, take the leash off his, there isn't any. I think that those fights would give him the experience in a couple of areas that I would like for him to gain. I think that the training camps would stand him in good stead. And I think that post those fights, winning in the fashion that I think he would, I think he's there, I think he's ready. If the Oleksandr Usyk thing come about now, and there was a old guard versus new thing that come about, he actually asked me if that come about, would you take it? And I was like, it's obviously open for a discussion, but I think it's something that you would have to. And like I say, I'm not going to sit here and go, 100% talk rubbish, he wipes the floor with him, he does this, he does that. But I certainly would not bet my house that he wouldn't.
I think it kind of speaks volumes that we're even having that conversation.
Exactly.
And you're not somebody who, you'd be quite okay with shutting that down, if that's how you felt, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm quite realistic, or if anything, quite conservative with the guys. I'm actually heavily critical on them. But I think there's a couple of fights that I've got in my mind that I'd like to get in terms of for his boxing profile and this and that aside. There's a couple of fights in my mind that I think would stand him in really good stead. And if those fights happen, I'm happy after them to let's go with anything.
Exciting times. Sticking with the heavyweights, I mentioned his name slightly earlier, Anthony Joshua, of course, member of the gym for 18 months or so now, officially, I suppose. Time's getting away, isn't it, about that? Of course, last time out was against Daniel Dubois, didn't go his way, of course, your way in the corner. A little bit of time has elapsed now, well, a lot of time has elapsed now, 6 months or so. I guess first question, haven't seen AJ today. How's he getting on?
Yeah, he's okay. He's had a few injuries and that he's just rehabilitating. He's also took some time off to take care of some other things in life, which is important as well. And but he's in good spirits. We catch up, stay in touch, of course. He's been in the gym a couple of times, and he'll be back shortly into the gym, back training properly, and that he's nearly all fixed up, and yeah, see how the land lies.
And obviously, you don't historically throughout your career take many losses as a gym in general. Anthony Joshua, of course, one of the biggest names in British boxing, doesn't take losses often either. How difficult was that as a loss? We'll come on to speak about it, but you yourself found yourself in for some criticism after that fight, which, you know, in the sport over a longer period of time, you know, is expected. It happens.
Course, yeah.
But what was, I guess, what do you feel looking back at that fight now?
In terms of
kind of obviously the way the fight went, which wasn't your way, and potential bearings it has on the future. You know, would Anthony Joshua like to box Daniel Dubois again? You know, who is he going to box in the future? How do you kind of, now you've had time to, I suppose, reflect on it, how do you look at, I guess, that fight, but also the relationship with yourself and AJ moving forward, I suppose?
Yeah, I think that, you know, obviously massively disappointing, really disappointing, really hard one to take. But as I said in the post-fight press conference, we've received a hell of a lot of praise for the work and that we've done with AJ. So we have to take part of the responsibility for when it doesn't go right as well, and that's the same with all of our fighters. It's part of the job. Obviously, when it's on that magnitude, it's tough, but we are battle hardened with this stuff. Not the first time, not going to be the last time. But we are really passionate about it. You know, I do what I do because I get a proper buzz out of the lads achieving their goals. I know what it's like to work so hard for your goals. I know what it's like to really not just want it, but to the physical effort, everything that it takes. So I get immense buzz out of helping the lads achieve that. You know, that's such an amazing feeling. But it's also the worst feeling when you don't manage to do that. And first and foremost, all the lads that we work with, I feel like we've got a great culture in the gym. So if something doesn't work out, it's very painful, and naturally it will affect us, which will affect the rest of the lads. And the rest of the lads are a whole team as well, and that is so important to me, that they all support each other. That is so important to me. I could not have a gym where they're happy to see each other lose, or they don't really like each other or anything like that. Everybody in the gym absolutely loves him. And I think that obviously it was a really tough one to take, but hey ho, you know, it's like I said, we got to be tough, we got to look forward, we got to move forward, and that doesn't mean we haven't got to reflect. I think that's really important. That's something that we've done. Being honest with you, I was around his house the next day, reflecting over the fight, going through the fight, going through the preparation, going through stuff post-fight, and we've done that 3 or 4 times. Come down the gym, reviewed it, went over it, and there will be some more things along the way, obviously. You know, what did you think about this? What did you think about that? Certain scenarios will pop up. That was similar to this, etc., etc. So we can only do what we can do in that sense, and we just got to look to move forward. How that looks in terms of opponents and all the rest of it, I don't know at the minute. So like I say, the heavyweight division can very quickly change. As we know, Joseph Parker and Daniel Dubois, Martin Bacoli got chucked into that mix. So things can change really quickly, especially with the heavyweight division. So we'll see. With
AJ, it seems as though the general, I guess, public feeling is that if he's going to come back, we want to see the Fury fight. It's kind of I mean, obviously there's people who do and don't. I want to see the fight. Andy Lee asked me on camera the other week, do you want to see it? Yes, I do, still want to see it. Do we think we see that fight? It seems to me like we got Calmbrook, yes, it was late. We got, you know, it is a fight that there is still an enormous demand for. Obviously for you, it's a very interesting kind of meeting between two guys that you know very, very well. Do you think we see that fight?
I really don't know, to be honest, and I just think that they're entitled to do what they want to do. The problem is if one wants it, one doesn't want it, or maybe they both don't want to do the fight, or maybe they do both want to do the fight and just can't figure out how that looks in a business sense. So I don't know, we'll see. I think it's important that even though, you know, for me, I've come into AJ's career, in terms of his boxing life, I've been I've got no right to tell him, you should do this, you should do that. Like, I can advise in terms of, they'll come to me and, what do you think about this opponent? What do you think about that fight? What do you think about that fight? These are a couple of options, what do you think? But it's, you know, there's any boxer that, Tyson, for example, he's wanting to retire. Nobody's got the right to turn around to him and say, you can't retire, or you have to fight again because Steve down a pub and the boxing world wants to see it. Like, it's not how it works. So I think we'll see. Being honest, I don't know if we'll see it. I don't have the answer. If I knew that, I'd be a rich man with the bookies. So yeah, I think we'll see. But obviously, I think if they were both 65 years old, I think there'd still be a demand for it, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those, isn't it? Until that happens, there's going to be the demand. Don't want to kind of pry too much, because I know it's an awkward thing for you to discuss. But when I first met you, I couldn't have ever imagined one day you would be training Anthony Joshua, much less potentially training him against Tyson Fury, who, of course, I mean, I know you worked with a lot of fighters before Tyson, but that's who you kind of were known for working with in the start. Would it be weird for you? Would you feel, I don't want to say uncomfortable or awkward because you're a professional, but you are also human, and you went through a long period of time with Tyson and went through a lot with him, and likewise AJ. I can't imagine how that may or may not feel for you.
I'm professional, like what you said there, so outside of it, completely different to actually being in. Of course, no, I've had an amazing relationship with Tyson, and I've also got an amazing relationship with AJ. And as it stands, I'm AJ's coach, and I've got a responsibility to him and a loyalty to him, and got to be professional about the situation. And I think that they, in terms of Tyson and his lot, I think that they would understand that, and sensible people, you know, they know that I'm not a malicious kind of guy that, I want to try and whatever. It's just a case of, if that thing pops up, it is what it is. Whenever I see Tyson or any of the family, I've still got a good relationship with them to say hello and all the rest of it. And yeah, I mean, look, like I say, we don't even know if it's going to happen. So if it happens, deal with it at the time. If not, as it stands, it's not even an issue, so we're making one out of nothing.
Well, I certainly wasn't trying to make an issue. Just going back to AJ Dubois, it was the only kind of thing that I want to talk about on that. Obviously, I want to talk about some stuff in the future. The criticism that you received after the fight. Now, I mentioned kind of when you first came on the scene, so as we were talking about the Artur Akavov fight earlier on, and kind of the early days. I think one of our first conversations around when you were in boxing, we were talking about some of the criticism that you'd got. Do you think you're unfairly criticised? Do you think you get held to a different standard potentially than other boxing coaches? Not naming any names and certainly not trying to make this a thing with you and other coaches, but do you feel like sometimes potentially you get unwarranted stick? Potentially,
maybe I don't, maybe I do, maybe I don't. I don't think it's for me to have that judgment on. Again, I can't, the problem is I don't have the time to focus on it. Yeah. Two, that the criticism stuff, you know, it's just another factor to motivate you. For the little bits that you do see, you're going to see it, it's going to be part of it, there's going to be some praise, but you have to manage that at the same time, because I think it's very easy to get carried away with, got a bit complacent, I'm the man, and this is happening, and that's happening, and so if you ride with that, you can get a very quick humbling. That's boxing. But it's part of the game. And I think coming into big stage boxing with the situation like the Akavov fight, I think that stood me in good stead, to be honest with you. I just think it's part of, you realise very quickly it's part of the game. You can't listen to it. And whether I'm deluded or not, I feel like if people were privy to the stuff that we've got and the information that we've got, when a fight goes right and when a fight goes wrong, I think people's perception would quickly change. But I could be wrong. They might go, nah, clueless, disagree with everything that they're saying there. But it's just part and parcel of the game, and I think you have to use it when you can and when you feel it.
Have you dealt with things differently than potentially when you were just starting? Everyone's a different person than they were yesterday, much less 10 years ago. But do you deal with, not even necessarily criticism, praise, kind of your day-to-day? How different are you compared to, I guess, when you were green?
I think I've always been pretty confident, but I'm very reflective. If I think, I'll always look at myself. Could I have done something better there? Was that right? I'll always reflect and look at my own work on a good day and a bad day, and I think that's important. So I think I've always been like that. I just think at the very start it was a bit like, oh, I didn't realise or expect this. But I think very quickly it was like, phew. I'll be honest, I made a comment in a fight once, and a highly regarded coach made a comment about something that I said, and I thought, still to this day, I think, I cannot believe you actually disagreed with what I had to say there. That is my, you couldn't make sense of what I said there. That I thought, to me, that was like, whoa. At the time, I thought these top coaches, I thought, God, they must have so much knowledge. And then with that, I was like, I was actually shocked. I was a bit like, you don't actually understand why I've said what I've said there, and how that makes sense, and how that's relevant to what was happening there. And I think that was a little wake-up call to me, if I'm honest. And then, yeah, just, I think in life as well, it happens, doesn't it? When you're doing well, or people want to pull you down or want to see you fail a little bit. I think this country's like that. And we see that a lot with the national football team and stuff like that.
AJ, good example.
Yeah, exactly. Even with Tyson and all of them, it's just, yeah, it's a funny old system or setup or approach, outlook sometimes, but part and parcel of the game, it's not gonna, I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it, and I think you have to be like that.
Sticking with the heavyweights, you've got so many heavyweights. I was kind of having a thought about this on the way in. Might be one of the more experienced heavyweight boxing coaches, certainly in this country, maybe around the world. I mean, obviously, you worked with Tyson Fury, you've got Anthony Joshua, Moses Itauma, Fabio Wardley, you've got Jamie TKV in the gym. Do you like working with the heavyweights? Is it a different vibe to working with a Leigh Wood at featherweight, or Shabazz, sort of fleet-footed super bantamweight? There must be differences, but also obviously parallels as well. It's boxing.
Yeah, there's principles. There's principles, and that's that really. I think that people can make a big deal of, I'm a heavyweight coach. Like, what does that mean? I think there's an element of the physical side of things. I think that they don't have to make weight, and how much certain sessions take out of them, and they're lugging around a big body there, and the impact and all the rest of it. I think you have to take that side of things into consideration. So I think on the physical, I think yes, there is a bit of a difference in training a heavyweight. You can't train them like you train a featherweight or a super bantamweight and expect them to perform the same. But I think in terms of boxing, principles are principles. And that's that, in my opinion. But yeah, I do enjoy training with them. It's an exciting division, always has been. Been involved in some crackers, some big, nice heavyweight fights. So, yeah.
What's the best one you've been involved with?
The best one I've been involved with? Somebody asked me a question the other, like what in terms of achievements. But being honest, again, because the reason I do what I do is because I get a massive buzz out of the individual achieving their goal. It's not. I don't get a buzz out of I'm doing a fight at this arena and all that. They're not turning up to see me. They turn up to see the boxer, and I get such a amazing feeling out of seeing that person achieve their goal. One of the best, in terms of that, one of the best examples of that is Leigh Wood winning his British title. There was nobody there. Nobody was there. But it'd been such a massive goal of his for such a long time. I could see what it meant to him. One, how hard he was working in the gym. Two, I could see what it meant to him when he achieved that. And I knew that was such a big weight off his shoulders. That was one of the best feelings I got. And it's not even close to one of the biggest wins we've had as a coaching team. But in terms of achievements of how that feeling that it gave me seeing somebody achieve one of theirs, that is one of the best there. So that's a prime example of that. So I wouldn't say any one is better than the other.
They're just all different, have their own little kind of nuances to them, I suppose, each win.
Yeah, for sure.
Sticking with the heavyweights, Fabio Wardley. I'm absolutely all in on the nickname, the Tractor Bomber. What do you think?
The Tractor Bomber.
The
Fabio
Tractor
the Tractor Bomber Wardley.
Doesn't have to be Fabio the Tractor Bomber. It should be the Tractor Bomber, Fabio Wardley. Ipswich, the Tractor Boys, Puncher. What do you think to that? Just to kick things off.
I think it's a bit above my department, if I'm honest.
I was hoping I was going to get some agreement so I could send it to him. But anyway.
You was expected it, yeah!
That's the best nickname I've ever had in my life, Rob. Brilliant. Fabio is somebody, I remember when you first had him in the gym, obviously with his co-trainer, Robert Hodgins, lovely man, very funny guy. I remember you saying to me, he said, he's like we can swear, and he's like a fucking British Deontay Wilder, is what he said. A terrible Ben Davison impression there. But he's a little bit more than that, isn't he? And we mentioned kind of heavyweight ding-dongs you've been involved with. Clark Wardley won, Wardley Clark won. It doesn't get much better than that. Going from strength to strength, Fabio Wardley. I mean, he is not somebody who has a huge amateur background and pedigree. Obviously, we all know the white-collar story. He's kind of exploded, really, in the last couple of years. He's just been ordered to box Kubrat Pulev for the WBA regular title. Some fighter and some human, Fabio Wardley, to be able to achieve what he's done. Yeah, for sure. He reminds me a hell of a lot of Leigh Wood. A hell of a lot. In a sense of, do this. Okay. You know, some fighters, you'll say to them, especially when they're punchers, you might say to them, there is a risk to doing this, but the risk outweighs the risk of not doing it. Doing this, you're going to take a scenario on. They're going to be punching back. However, if you don't do this, you run the risk of never capitalising on a massive weak area of their game or a massive vulnerable area of their game. It is risky. Be ballsy in that moment. There's time and a place for that. Okay, that like he will commit there, and that is what you know. So that is important, and that is very similar to Leigh Wood in the sense of when we say do this, it's like okay. There's strengths and weaknesses to that. Sometimes you need a little bit of this situation's occurred. You know, can't walk you through every single situation. Or sometimes a scenario that might seem simple to this is happening. You need to do this to stop that from happening. Very simple. They're so hell-bent on everything else, the big scenarios, that sometimes they can lose sight of that. But I would rather that they are, you want me to do that? Okay. I would rather that because you can bank on that situation's going to occur, and that's really important. You need that in the locker. So when they get in, sometimes when they spar, for example, what I find can often happen is you can often start to prepare for the sparring partner. The sparring partner keeps doing this, that's causing him a bit of trouble. All of a sudden you're changing scenarios to the sparring partner that are not as relative to the opponent. So sometimes they might not be the best sparrers because of that, but they deliver on the night because
they're focused on what they need to do. And that's where them two similarities come in. Even there's other little things that I'm not going to go into, but they're very, very similar in some ways.
That kind of willingness to, I guess, put yourself in the line of fire, is that more valuable at heavyweight because of the physical dimensions, the additional risk? I mean, anyone can get knocked out in whatever weight class, but with the big boys, it is a little bit different because of that physical side. Would you agree with that or not? Having that willingness to kind of put yourself in heavyweight firing line, is that different to other weight classes? Does that add more for a heavyweight than it does potentially for other weight classes?
I think if you're a puncher, I think there's a time and a place where sometimes the opponent might, do you know what it is? You might be losing big chunks of rounds here. The opponent might be a little bit better technically than you. But you can claw that back by capitalising on these moments. But you've got to be brave in these moments. That's a situation where, or you do a great job of setting up this situation. In that situation, you've got to capitalise on it and put something behind it. He might be firing back, but you've got to trust we're telling you you'll get off first there. Moses against Dempsey, for example. There was a certain scenario in that. When you do this, he's going to do that. When you see that, commit. He will fire back, but you will land first and get rid of him. No hesitation. Saw that, bob-on. That scenario was drilled 1,000 times before we went in there. However, it's okay doing that, but when they get in there, if there's a little bit of, ooh, there was none of that with him. Well, there it is, bob-on. Didn't think twice. Spectacular knockout come off the back of that. So when you've got a big puncher, there is a time and a place for that. There's obviously a time and a place for the opposite. Don't take so many risks. You know, we've had that approach. I've been labelled too much of a defensive coach before.
And then almost too offensive in the Anthony Joshua Daniel Dubois
Yeah,
fight.
so I think there's a time and a place and you have to manage that. But when you've got a puncher, there's certain times when, I just used that example. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody. I used that example for somebody like Fabio. Because there are times where, like you said, his lack of amateur pedigree might stand out. And if you don't take risks in terms of getting rid of somebody, getting rid of this person, there is a chance they might be able to beat you on a points thing if you don't. Or even if that punch doesn't knock somebody out, it's going to accumulate for you to allow you to start to take over. But you've got to be brave in that situation. He's got that. And that's the coachability side of things. In terms of braveness, that's one thing, but that's the coachability. Okay, you're telling me to do that, I'm going to do that. Sometimes, you know, not sometimes, but you need that. And that's when you say about him being an overachiever and Leigh Wood being an overachiever. That's how. That is how.
Can you coach that bravery into a fighter?
Sometimes I think you can. Sometimes I don't think you can. Things depend on the individual.
Obviously, with somebody like Moses, I mean, one of the questions that I have, and I can say it now, he's gone. So I want to see him get hit on the chin by a big, horrible heavyweight in 10-ounce gloves. Is there, not specific to him, but you know, he has that youth, that fearlessness now. People want to see if he's still got it after he gets hit. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm. I've actually seen him get hit with a good shot. Sneezed it off.
When you see something like that, obviously you don't want to see your fighter get hit in sparring, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, of course,
boxing.
yeah.
But when you see something like that, you see him get hit with a good shot, is that a mental note in your head where you tick that off? Obviously it's not 10 ounces, not in the ring, but it's still as close as you can kind of get to it, isn't it?
I just think Frank Warren said something to me before about a matchup, and he said, if he hits him on the chin, it's over. Like, the fella's a dynamite puncher. And my response was, if it takes, I don't know what the numbers are, but let's just say if it takes 20 pounds of pressure to knock somebody out, and that man's got 40, what difference does it make? Because if he hits him flush with 20, he's going anyway. So it makes no difference if he hits 40. So I think they can all hurt each other when you're talking about the top guys. We've seen that. But skills pay the bills. Skills pay the bills. And that's the most important thing. And without that, you know, all this, can they take a shot on that? It's not really something you want to be banking.
Yeah. Particularly
shouldn't be banking his career on. And we've seen some great fighters over the years that, he's got a great chin, then he's been clipped with a shot and he's been knocked out.
Yeah, anyone can go.
Yeah, it can happen. Skills pay the bills. Some of the best chins in the world are the best chins because they don't get, even when they get hit, they ride it, they know how to take the sting out of it, anticipation, etc. These things are more important. So yeah.
Just taking a little bit of a pivot, I suppose, away from your gym and away from your fighters. You recently became a father. I was going to say became a father again. You're already a father. People like to always point that out whenever you say it. But you've had a second daughter. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What are you still doing here at 6 o'clock apart from speaking to me?
Yeah, you keeping me behind.
My point being on that is, I guess as you've developed, obviously you've got a 2.5-year-old as well. How do you balance? It's almost like your family's grown at the same size as your gym as well.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? I mean, because everybody who we've spoken to today from your gym have all said the same thing about you, that you live and breathe it, that you're here first thing in the morning, you're the last one to leave at night. I've got a missus who's also a boxing widow. How do you manage that kind of lifestyle, I suppose?
Yeah, there isn't great balance, is there? Something that I do look at, and I intend to, sometimes I think I need to be better at that, but there isn't really balance. So all you can ask for is appreciation. That's all you can ask for from the lads, for, you know, you putting in as much time as you do. That's all you can ask for. Again, when you talk about the culture in the gym, I think we have that. I think the lads are all really good guys. I think that they all appreciate each other, and what I love about we said we were steering it away from the gym, and I've drove it back to the gym. But
I sort of did I the same.
Like if one lad's got a fight coming up, and another lad hasn't got a date, that lad who hasn't got a date will make no bones about coming into the gym to drill some scenarios with the lad who's got a fight coming up, and I love that. Like, they're happy to help that fighter, and in return, when the roles are reversed, that fighter will help that fighter out. And I think there's just a really good team effort. So yeah, all you ask for is appreciation. Obviously, missus and that being very understanding, and make the most of it when you do get the time, which I do. You know, that's one of the reasons why I'm getting so early, is because the babies and the kids and everybody's asleep, so I can make the most of that time, so that I've got a little bit more time in the evening when I go back, and they're up and that. So
obviously it's difficult for you to kind of think about, or maybe it isn't, at this stage of your career. You seem to be in the real meat of your career at the minute, in a sense of, you know, the gym's thriving, you've got fighters of all different types of levels. Have you had a thought about what could happen in 10? Do you think you'll be doing this in 10 years, 20 years time? You're somebody who has this kind of unquenchable thirst for boxing, you know, and improving fighters. It would seem to me that you know, this is probably going to be your vocation for a long period of time. But do you have any other thoughts? Do you want to potentially do something else at some point in your life, or maybe be less busy so you can spend time around the family?
Potentially, there is that. Definitely mindful of that. And when that time comes, when I get a little bit older, it's something that I might assess. I might become, for a period of my career, I might work with 2 fighters, 3 fighters, 1 fighter. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that at the minute, but it's definitely something that I'm aware of and conscious of. But as it stands, there's no bloody exit, is there, at the minute? So we'll see. We'll see. But it's definitely something that I'm aware of, like for those reasons that you mentioned there.
Will you have your girls box?
No, I won't. I'll teach them to be able to look after themselves, but I won't have them box.
Yeah, I get that question all the time about my daughter. Will she box? No. I mean, she can do what she wants, apart from boxing.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're all good.
Nah, she can't do what she wants.
Yeah, we know a little bit too much about boxing and boxers. We'll leave it at that, shall we? Yes, moving on. Yeah, I guess that's kind of bringing us, I guess, to the end of our time here, Ben. Always appreciate you having us to the gym and staying extra late when you've got a 3-day-old newborn at home. Thanks very much for having us down here at the Ben Davison Performance Centre. I'm sure by the time I come down here again, you'll probably have a fighter or two under your guidance. But thank you very much, Ben. Always a pleasure. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
Pleasure.
Cheers, mate.
All these are haters. Oh, pure haters. They're haters, but it is what it is. I don't expect them to like me. I don't like them either. So
When I arrive at Undisputed, I'm going to arrive like a king.
They're just keeping that money train going.
It's not over for Anthony.
Best is still to come.
Anthony Joshua lied to us.
How could you criticize AJ now? He's on the best run of his career.
This is a completely different fight.
There isn't anyone I know that's more dedicated to the sport than him.
You should only give up when that competition within yourself dies.
Get ready for the return of Anthony Joshua.